Welcome to part 1 of Fish Milanese, first place winner in the MQE Communities Prompt Contest. Fish Milanese is a historical fiction short story featuring a game of hazard in the Rotterdam Tavern during the year 1638. Prepare for a tale of pirates, meat cakes, and a distressing damsel in a daring dress. For more information about MQE, please stay until the end of the video or look in the information box below.
De Zoute Zeeman Tavern, Rotterdam, Dutch Republic. De Zoute Zeeman, or the Salty Sailor Tavern, would be more accurately described as a bawdy house that just happened to have a good cook. Located in the bad part of Rotterdam near the port, the establishment was frequented by pirates, mercenaries, sailors, and the occasional merchant who had a little more money to spend on frivolous pursuits. For a place of ill repute, the building was well lit, with numerous windows that allowed sunlight to shine on its occupants and their sinful activities, and a grand chandelier in the main hall that had been given to the owner as a gift from a particularly pleased tulip merchant just a year prior. Besides eating, drinking, and whoring, one would also find gamblers among its villainous patrons, who were often the cause of most of the tavern's troubles.
The name of the game is Hazard,
a gray-haired arbiter said in a raised voice over the raucous laughter of drunken tavern patrons.
It's real simple. Call out your number, throw your dice, and hope to Christ in heaven that the number on your dice matches.
Yes, we've all played this game before,
said an impatient-looking young woman in French, who fanned herself with an embroidered paper fan while looking at her opponent dead in the eye. The young woman seemed out of place in the tavern. Amongst the doublets and armor of mercenaries and the heavy makeup and plunging necklines of prostitutes, she wore an elegant green dress and matching hat, decorated with an ostrich feather. Her eyes were relaxed, and her posture seemed to indicate that she might have come from money, but she likewise could have been feigning nobility. Her opponent, meanwhile, was easier to discern. The man was clearly some sort of seafarer. He smelled of seawater and ale, even though the drinks had not been served yet. He attempted to keep the appearance of a man higher than his station, but his gaudy, colorful doublet and the sword that hung from his belt betrayed his identity as a pirate. They spoke to each other in French, as custom dictated at the time, when two people had no common tongue to share.
If the number thrown is not the number you have called out, continued the arbiter, you must throw the same number again to...
Else the die is cast by the next player,
interrupted the pirate.
Yes, Master Arbiter. We know the rules.
And what are our stakes?
The lady asked him, her eyes bearing an unmistakable expression of avarice.
Let's start off small, shall we? 16 florins, he
said, placing a fistful of coins onto the table. The lady clucked her tongue.
Oh, poor me. It would have taken 4 months to earn that.
She produced an equal amount of coins from a rather large coin purse and slid it onto the table.
Would have. A long time ago. I bet an equal amount to the bet of
Captain Jacobo Storenvalk. Likewise, I would like to know the name of the lovely damsel that I will be defeating this fine day. You are Miss...
Capitana, actually. Capitana Sofia Fortezza.
Tornvalk was slightly confused. The concept of a female captain was unheard of. He simply assumed she was playfully mocking him and motioned the arbiter that they were ready to continue. The arbiter nodded in satisfaction and produced a cup and a pair of dice.
We shall now roll to determine initiative. May the best player win,
he said with a nod. Sophia gingerly picked up a die with her fingers while Tornvalk scraped the other off the table like a bear. Both threw at the same time. Looking over the dice, the arbiter declared,
4 and 6 in favor of the lady.
Grazie, messere arbitro,
said Sophia as she tucked away her fan to pick up the cup and the dice.
You are Italian, then,
said Tornvalk with a roguish smile.
I knew your French had a funny accent. When we Dutch speak, we do not sing, my dear.
That is correct. Instead, you swill your words like horrible wine, my dear,
she replied, narrowing her eyes.
I call a 5. Teach the Zoltacones some manners.
With that remark, she kissed the cup for luck and made a single toss. 5 black dots stared up at the pirate from the table. Tornvalk nodded politely as Sophia took all of his money.
I will get that back. You will see.
Several tosses and a pile of coins later, the pirate proved to be false. Sofia sat across from him, grinning with the self-assured smile that only victory could bring, while he stared at her with vengeful eyes full of irritation.
I'm quite a bit peckish, aren't you?
She said.
I am quite a bit thirsty,
The pirate said, glad to finally have a distraction from his losing streak. He stood up and cupped his hands over his mouth as he called out to a nearby tavern maid.
Hey you, girl, come here and give us some damn service.
The jaded tavern maid approached their table with 2 mugs of ale and placed them on the table.
You'll have to forgive him.
Said Sofia, giving the tavern maid a reassuring smile.
He's more used to yelling orders than talking like a civilized person.
As if you're not accustomed to the same, darling.
Said a melodic, saccharine voice that came from behind her. Sofia spun around in her seat and looked up to see the source of the voice. An undeniably beautiful, fair-skinned, golden-haired woman with dazzling blue eyes and a pearly white smile wearing a cobalt blue dress put her hand on Sofia's shoulder. Gravina Krista Stenbach, a Swedish noblewoman, and her on and off friend and rival had no business being here. She was usually managing the affairs of her estate 1,000 miles away in Riga. The Gravina was always polite and refined, but there was something about her Swedish accent and the way she chose her words that rubbed Sofia the wrong way.
What are you doing here?
Sofia said, whipping out her fan.
A day of working at the guild house can be so taxing, and I was hungry. May I?
Krista said, taking a seat next to Sofia.
How did you know where this place was?
Said the Italian, a frown slowly starting to form on her brow.
Gracious, madame. I have a life too.
Krista said with a wink.
Well, you are welcome to join us, I suppose. We were just getting a bite to eat anyway. I'm sure the captain doesn't mind.
Not at all. Please, come and...
Flip it. I think you'll find the new menu quite refreshing.
New menu?
Chorused Sofia and Torrenvalk.
My dear girl.
Krista said, turning to the tavern maid.
What do we have available on this fine day?
The exasperated tavern maiden closed her eyes and mouthed off from memory.
Oh, meat cakes, meatball soup, rye bread, mincemeat pie, lobster house cheese, and metwurst sausage.
Aye. It doesn't sound all that different from when I last left. And the selection sounds pretty good. I'll have the meatball soup and a piece of bread.
Try the lobster, Sophia. Go on. My treat. I wouldn't want you spending your hard-earned money.
I can pay for my meal myself. Thank you so much for your offer, Your Grace.
She replied through gritted teeth. Turning to the tavern maid, she said,
I would like the usual, please. Meat cakes with the house cheese.
Krista steepled her fingers together.
I will have the meat cakes as well. A lady of my stature must watch her figure.
A fine statement for one that is 23 years on this earth and is yet to marry.
I heard that from MacLeod. I could choose to speak ill of you, but I will say nothing of your scandalous relationship with your man Fletcher. On an unrelated note, is it not a sin for a Catholic to lie with an Anglican?
The two ladies directed cool stares at each other before Captain Torrenvalk interrupted them.
Ladies, we were in the middle of a game, I believe.
Oh, yes. Forgive me for interrupting, sir. Allow me to watch if it pleases you. These games that you commoners play excite me so.
Torrenvalk grumbled a little, while Sofia rolled her eyes as she picked up the dice again.
I believe I am still the caster.
She said in a low tone.
What are you putting down, Captain?
Torrenvalk exhaled.
20 florins.
Oh dear, and just as I was having a little fun. I will match you.
Krista giggled, hiding her mouth with her lace-gloved fingers. Sofia shut her eyes in frustration and turned to Krista.
Is something funny, Your Grace?
Oh, forgive my impertinence, my dear. I am not sure it's customary to play with such small sums in this game. We both know you have more coin than that to wager.
Your Grace, it doesn't work like that.
Sofia said with a sigh. She was cut short by the sound of steel rasping from a scabbard. Torrenvalk had pulled a dagger with a very large, comb-like blade with several deep serrations on one side and a sharp edge on the other.
This is a sword breaker. It is meant to parry, disarm, or as the name suggests, break the blades of your enemies. I have had this for many years, but I am looking to purchase a new weapon. If you add 80 of your florins to the pot, I will add this dagger.
Sophia looked over the blade. It was shiny and well-oiled, and the S-shaped hilt matched her first name. She had to have it.
A fine dagger, my lady,
said the Arbiter.
It is a rarity even here in this port of pirates and mercenaries.
80 florins it is.
She nodded, placing the pile of coins on the table. The aroma of cheese and meatballs wafted through the air as the tavern maid placed their food on the table, temporarily interrupting their game. Krista gave a little giggle as she reached for a tiny meat cake.
Bon appetit, as they say en français.
Taking the smallest, daintiest bite of the crispy, battered, patty-shaped snack, Krista let out a satisfied as she chewed on the crunchy breading and bits of filling. Sophia gave her a fake smile and wished that she would choke on her next bite, while taking a cake of her own. Her refined Italian senses picked up the smells of butter, garlic, onions, paprika, and potatoes. The cake was warm to the touch, and its crusty exterior was firm and inviting.
You cannot go wrong with the meat cakes, Your Grace. Besides, no one makes them like Reuben does.
Sophia said as she closed her eyes and bit into her cake with a crunch.
This is true. No one made them like Reuben did until I convinced the good man to change the recipe.
Sophia's eyes shot open as she drew her fan and covered her face with it while she spat out the piece onto her plate.
Figlio de puttana, ma che caso è questo? That is not beef.
Again, this is true. It is pickled herring. My favorite.
Sophia snarled and got out of her seat.
Friends, if you'll excuse me, I need to see the cook.
Ah, excellent. I'm sure that Reuben will appreciate the compliment.
Your Grace, the cook has committed a mortal sin against the gods of food. I am going to kill him, and if he places the blame on you, you are next.
I am sure there is nothing wrong with the dish, love. Perhaps I should come along with you.
Yes, stay close by so that I can stab you after I fillet this idiot of a cook. He has disgraced the concept of a meat cake and must pay.
Oh, you commoners and your crass humor. I love it so.
Sophia pointed to the Arbiter and said,
Watch the pot. Make sure that everything stays as it is.
The Arbiter bowed to the two ladies as Sophia stormed off towards the kitchen with a giggling Krista close behind her. Captain Tornvalk let out a sigh as they walked away from the table.
Grevina Stenbock, meat cakes are called such because they contain meat,
said Sophia as she brushed past drunken louts who whistled at her and her companion.
Herring is a type of meat, I shall have you know. For the English, meat can be anything from cornmeal, flour, oats, and things of that nature. Fascinating, is it not?
Sophia stopped mid-stride and considered turning around to strangle Krista, but she thought better of it and flung open the kitchen door instead.
Reuben Mulder, where are you?
A portly, jolly-looking fellow with rosy red cheeks turned his attention away from a smoking cauldron of delicious-smelling soup to greet the two ladies.
Ah, Capitana Fortezza, it is a pleasure to see you, but you must know that being in the kitchen is forbidden for customers.
Reuben suddenly noticed Krista and immediately made a flourishing low bow.
Your Grace, I'm at your humble service.
This is not a social call, Mercere. What have you done with the menu? I ordered the meat cake and you surprised me with that?
Ah, yes, the new Viskolkish. They appear to be quite popular amongst the locals, especially the sailors and longshoremen. What of them?
Reuben, they used to be made of actual meat.
Sophia said, gesturing with her fingers in the way her countrymen did.
Why did you change the recipe?
Reuben placed his hands together and smiled.
Well, you see, Grevena Stenbox convinced me that it would be much more economical if I were to make my food from the local ingredients found here, at the harbor, rather than seeking fare found further afield. But she was correct, and the customers are not complaining either.
Sophia sighed and placed a friendly hand on Reuben's shoulder.
You know how dear you and your cooking are to me, my good Reuben. But I am afraid your customers are only enjoying their food because they are Dutch, and thus have no sense of what good food is.
What?
I cannot eat these fish cakes, and so I will make a dish of my own.
Krista clapped her hands in excitement.
Oh, are we to cook? How lovely.
Reuben furrowed his brow.
Excuse me, Capitana, but I must insist that you leave. This is, after all, my kitchen.
Must I remind you of who we are?
She opened the door behind her enough so that Reuben could see the customers outside.
Do you see all the men in the helmets and armor out there? They belong to Regimento de Destino Crudele, the Cruel Fate Regiment, my regiment. And of course, all the louts in their fancy blue frock coats and feathered hats work for Gravina Stenbock here. Talbot Company runs this part of town, and if you kick us out, you will kick out more than half of your customers. Besides, we'll only take a minute.
Reuben frowned and sighed in resignation.
So be it.
Excelente. You will barely know that we are here.
20 minutes had passed before Krista and Sofia burst out of the kitchen door, their sleeves still rolled up from kitchen work. Sofia carried a steaming plate of breaded fish fillets, a specialty of her home city of Milan, and set them back on her table, where the captain was still waiting, thrumming his fingers with an empty soup bowl in front of him.
Apologies, Captain,
said Sofia as she speared one of the fillets with a fork and served it on the captain's plate.
I felt I needed to correct the cook's mistake. I know that you might be vexed at me for having you wait so long, so I made sure to make one of these for you. Bon appetito.
Well, it was really no matter for me to wait. But I appreciate the gesture. Many thanks.
The captain took a bite of the crunchy fillet and nodded his head in approval as Sofia reached for the dice once again.
It truly was something different to make. Cuisine from Sofia's region of Italy tends to be a tad bit fattening, but it is indeed pleasing to those of simpler palates.
There may come a time, Your Grace. There may come a time.
Sofia mumbled in annoyance before she took a bite of her own cooking. She momentarily forgot how annoyed she was with the Gravina when she tasted the buttery breading and the warm, sweet flounder fillets.
My lady,
Said the arbiter.
do you wish to be reminded of the stakes?
She swallowed and said,
No need, Messere Arbitro. I believe it was 100 florins to the captain's 20 and his beautiful dagger.
The arbiter nodded.
Molto bene. May God favor me and grant me an 8.
The dice rolled on the table in between plates and mugs of ale, showing a 3 and a 4.
7 to 8. Odds are 5 to 6.
Sofia exhaled and rolled again, producing 2 3s.
6. An unfortunate roll. Pot goes to Captain Tornvalk.
Tornvalk chuckled as he raked in his 100 florins and retrieved his dagger. Sofia crossed her arms in frustration.
You know, dear, I do not believe it is wise to invoke God's name when playing a sinful game such as this, especially when it is the same game that the Romans played over his son's clothing.
Ah, fanculo.
Sofia muttered as she buried her face in her hands.
50 florins to the pot, my lady.
Said the captain, who seemed to be more animated than before.
I shall match your bet.
Sofia said as she placed her coin on the table with pursed lips.
You know, dear,
Gravina Stenbock, I thank you for your advice, but I am responsible for my own finances.
Sofia replied with a hiss. Krista gave a small bow with a smile and respectfully remained silent. Grabbing the dice from Sofia, Captain Tornvalk rolled them in his hand rather than in the cup, chanting 9, 9, 9 as he did. When the dice hit the table, the dice showed a 6 and a 3. As the captain raked in his winnings in Glee, Sofia noticed there was something odd about one of the die. On the face of the 6th die, there was a tiny, fairly obvious scratch near one of the 6 dots that was not there when she rolled the dice for initiative. With a quick swipe, she grabbed the odd die and tossed it in her drink. The die rolled around in the amber-colored ale until 6 dots faced upwards. The arbiter threw a sour look at the captain, whose face was slowly turning red with anger.
This establishment does not abide cheaters, Captain Tornvalk.
And what are you going to do about it, old man?
The captain snarled, resting his hand on his sword hilt.
He will not have to do anything,
Said Sofia, who was seething with anger.
because I challenge you to a duel. Thank you for listening to part 1 of Fish Milanese. Special thanks to our guest voice actors Daniel Paulus, Lily Martinez, and Anthony Mark. If you enjoyed this creation, tap the like button. MQE stands for Muses, Quills, and Editors, a safe and supportive creative community. To further support Michael Regal and the rest of MQE, please subscribe and click the bell for future notifications. For details on joining or further questions, please check out our Discord link or our website, both noted in the info box below, where you will also find an Amazon link to Regal's debut novel, The Talbot Company. Thank you again, and have a marvelous day.
Sailor, what shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Early in the morning. Way, hey, and up she rises. Way, hey, and up she rises. Way, hey, and up she rises. Early in the morning. Putting in the lump, put it gently sober. Putting in the lump, put it gently sober. Putting in the lump, put it gently sober. Early